So this is a new series I'm excited about, and I want to begin with a thought. And that thought is that every question is a quest, and that the quests that we embark on determine our lives. And if you'd like to be on this podcast or nominate someone to be on this podcast, all you have to do is go on these quests. So I'm going to lead here, and if this speaks to you, reach out and we'll have a conversation. What is a question that you've never been asked that would open up insights into successfully relating to you? And I've coached people to ask this question to me, but no one has ever spontaneously asked me, how can I love and support you? And I just really love this question because it makes it really easy to address the points in the relationship that are not as good, and easy ways that the relationship could improve. What are 3 things that, if anyone did them, would make it easy for you to feel loved and supported? I think that the first thing is to express a clear intention around relating. I'd like to have a relationship with you. The second thing is to say, I'd like to have a conversation with you without time pressures. I'd like to create a 3-4 hour window in which to explore the ways that would be valuable to relate to me, and explore the ways that would be valuable to relate for you, to kind of get to know the connecting and disconnecting points well enough mutually so that we could steer through and have a pretty good sense of a clear connection. And the third thing would be to practice that as a discipline. What is a specialized relationship in your life right now that, if it existed, would add 30% or more to your quality of well-being? So first of all, I really enjoy the question, and I would say that it would be a skill mediator, meaning someone who gets to know my skill sets and availability, and who spends, let's say, 1 hour a day to 3 hours a day researching the planet, networking the planet, to find fits where I can contribute and make a positive difference. And they came back to me and sent me a daily update of the opportunities. I've researched 10 podcasts, and this person would be interested in talking to you. And so you could do this podcast on this subject, on this format, in this day. And I can just say, yes, I'll do that one. Or I've found someone that would really like to be listened to in this way around this. Or I found a neighbor who would like some help cooking while they've got their back going out. And so the thing that makes this valuable to me is not only kind of expanded possibilities, but also paving the way for a warm welcome. Because there's a lot of fumbling, uncertainty, awkwardness, defensiveness, and rejection that goes on in presenting a new way of interacting. And for someone to do that on my behalf allows me to put my attention on, I guess, preparing and being my best in that area and discerning which things I can and cannot do. And because I have a fear of, I don't like making other people uncomfortable. And so I think I would end up contributing a lot more in that way than I would just avoiding that discomfort and staying in a relatively small world. Okay, what social pattern do you find most painful, and what could another person do to reduce that pain? Well, I think the social pattern that I feel that is most painful is invisibility, meaning someone starting to relate to me without checking in any way, and then reacting or not relating. So for example, in a group or many one-on-one interactions, I'm never going to be asked certain questions that would open up the door to contribute the most value. And so I would say it's the sense of being invisible because other people don't have the sense to ask and don't know enough to know what to ask. And what someone could do for me around that pattern is ask me periodically, what do you think that you could contribute to this situation that would be most valuable to a positive outcome for this situation? Like wherever I am, in any context, that is a wonderful kind of invitation because it presumes a couple of valuable things. One is it presumes that I have something to contribute that is valuable. And two, it presumes that I've got a good analyzing sense to know what that might be. And three, there's some trust and courtesy there so that I don't have to fight to bring that forward. Describe in film script view a peak experience that you would like to have in detail. Well, I'd really enjoy being in a non-chemical hot tub in a place like Thailand. Thailand is my kind of favorite country. And to have 3 people I would really like to talk to. And so the script begins as we're staying in a hotel with a beautiful sea view vista. And we kind of gather for, a morning drink and, maybe some croissants. And I really enjoy croissant, marmalade, some fresh carrot sticks, celery sticks, some goat cheese on the celery sticks, a fresh squeezed orange juice with a little bit of an extra flavor that I like, but which, I'd have to think a little bit of what it is. It might be a hint of mint or some other kind of flavoring in the juice. So partly fresh, fresh pressed, fresh squeezed. Maybe even I don't think I've tried orange juice, cucumber, and mint. But, anyway, a delicious, refreshing drink to be served tapas over the course of a conversation, to have an offset umbrella, over the hot tub, and to be able to be at kind of the ideal temperature and set the jets. But it's very quiet, other than, maybe some huddled conversations nearby. And just to be with 3 people and expansively dream and vision together for about 2 or 3 hours, being served periodic refreshing drinks and tapas, and then to go together and have a massage, and again, continue to talk about certain insights, etc., as they come up. Do some writing that afternoon, and kind of have a breeze coming in as I'm looking out at this, beautiful blue ocean. And I really like the jagged rocks that are present, in Thailand, and several. This could also be in Bali. And then walk alone down and through, a cliff walk. So I had breeze and some awareness, and maybe listen to some Audible, do a little meditating, and check back with a beloved while I'm doing that. And then meet for dinner with a really, it could be Thai. I like the idea of kind of sizzling heat. I really enjoy, there's a Puerto Rican place in where I live that's called Soul Food, and I like plantains and fresh leaves and stuff, and a nice salad, and then to finish the evening as couples. So there might be 6 of us, and be out in the balcony in that same kind of hot tub area, and then ruminate on things, talk together with my wife, and then meet again the next day for breakfast, and then do something open. So this would be a weekend experience, and the highlight or the posture in this whole thing is a sense of respectful intent tracking on a shared passion. So one of my favorites would be, how could we bring the most value to each other's lives? And then having a really meaningful heart connection with 2 other couples, through the course of this weekend. And at some point, going swimming or snorkeling together on the, in the ocean below, and seeing some beautiful tropical fish. That's, an 11 out of 10 peak experience for me. What is one thing almost no one knows about you that is important to understanding you? Well, I think one of the things that's important in understanding is that emotionally, there's a very young part in me that needs validation and wants to be liked. And then mentally, there's a very abstract and much older part of me that is not at all personal. It's just kind of exploring knowledge and ideas. And that bringing these two together, having enough warmth and enough respect and courtesy so that the smaller parts of myself feel kind of like a welcome child in the mix, like that the innocence and also very much a wounded inner child just feels welcome, and that neither of these gets lost in the interaction. The attention to small things about courtesy and feelings and openness, and the awareness of the beauty of ideas, and to have respect for the small and the large parts of me in that interaction, and as part of that, to do the same for another, to be mindful of the younger, more sensitive parts in another, and be mindful of what the future and what the possibilities hold. What is one important sequence in your value hierarchy that connects you and disconnects you with others? Well, I think one of the things is I place a high value on probabilities, on data, and on strategy. And for me, so if there's a chance to, let's just get together and hang out, or, which is generally considered fun, or let's get together and really design something meticulously and study data, that my awareness of how much easier it is to get statistically to fun through the more engineering type approach leads me to value a more conscious, intentional, and engineering approach more than the more relaxed, spontaneous approach, because within an hour, if I have a willing partner, we can get to 7 or higher mutually using the technological approach. And 3 hours is going to be awkward and unsatisfying 80% of the time if it's just free-flowing. And so for me, kind of the peak fun is linked to competency and excellence at creating that fun. And I've never, if I roll the dice and just get together with someone randomly, I would say 80% of the time or so, it's not likely to be very valuable for me and or the other. That one or both of us is going to be irritated. And 80% of the time or more, if there's a clear intention and an investment in seeing enough to click and then doing that intentionally, it's very, very reliable and easy, if someone's willing to do that, to get to a point where on a 1 to 10 scale, both people can have a 7 to 10 experience or more. Well, I guess 7 to 10, 7 or more experience, including the choice to separate. Because sometimes, if your partner is just really overwhelmed and frazzled, in the course of that conversation, of kind of seeing where the value is, the highest value is actually not to spend time together. And then you can do that as a mutual collaboration, like, I want you to have a great day, and so let's not spend time together. And then you know what you're going off to do that is fun for you. And I know why you're doing it, so there's a sense of partnering and inclusion. What talent do you have that, if it were fully utilized, would result in a massive increase in well-being for our planet, and why? Well, I think that the best talent that I can contribute, that in kind of a technical sense, is to be privy to the design sequence in competent design processes. So there's a couple of things. One is to have a role in setting the structure by which important designs take place. And what I mean by that is if one person or a group of people is setting out to do something intelligent and impactful, that's the first design process, is to clarify what that intention is. And then the second part of that intention is to outline a strategy listing, these are the various strategies that I'm considering, and this strategy out of those strategies is a strategy that I think would be the most likely to achieve that end. And then here's how I plan to implement that strategy. And these are the list of options that I've considered. And these are the things this is why I'm doing this and not this. And then this is my priority, my sequence of implementing. And this is why it's my sequence. So if someone will make their math of decision making transparent, and from why they're setting about doing it in the first place to what they believe will be the end goal with a given amount of time, money, and natural resources, I would like to be a valued editor of that process, where I could add certain possibilities to that sequence that I see are not on the list because it's broken down, and take the same amount of time, money, and natural resources and look at ways to create a much higher yield in terms of human well-being per unit of time, money, and natural resources generated. And this would be incredibly fun to participate in leveraging other people's activities. The other role that kind of ties, because I've often kind of thought of playing that role, but something that I'm not, is a sacred role where I get to be a priest of a very specific kind. And what I mean by that is much of my lifestyle and personality does not qualify for being a priest. There's a very specific persona in me that at times I enter. One of my favorite things is to bless and to bring blessing. Another is to honor auspicious moments of kind of passing and opening, to witness the becoming of another human being at a potent emotional moment. And if I design the ideal for this, the first thing to be aware of is that a tremendous amount of the power of a priest comes in the form of reputational expectation of either the role or the individual. And so the way to set this up, where I can play this role, would first of all be in a paradigm where I'm that person in that role, and then I'm not that person outside of that role. In other words, that persona in me is incredibly generous, incredibly attentive. But that's one persona. In other personas, I'm incredibly self-centered and irritable and stuff like that. And what we tend to do is, in the way that we've set up kind of priestly type roles, in our culture today, is we expect or feel jarred, like, if you received a blessing and something from a priest in a monastery and something, and then later that day you meet the priest in a Corvette listening to rock music who's, playing around, we say, oh, that's not a real priest. And so, so a really key distinction is being in the role and not in the role. So there is that persona in me that would like to play that role and really enjoys playing that role and can bring a lot of well-being, but that doesn't want to play it all the time. I don't know, 2 hours or an hour a day or something like that. And then still, do all the other various things, which are very kind of distinct personas. And so that, that would be the kind of the first step. And then to be able in some way, and I think ideally the thing is to create this expectation around an experience in a particular context. To really celebrate important moments for groups of people and for individuals. Important moments of witnessing, important moments of blessing, important moments of of honoring and being present, to let another human being know that in that space and in that way, that I see you, and none of the stuff outside the room matters. Money, position, politics, none of that matters. I see you, and I'm celebrating something about you. Being yourself it just feels incredibly enlivening. What is one dream that feels truly beautiful to you, and why? I would say that it would be to create an island, a floating island, to create a floating island in a bay so that it could be brought in inclement weather, but to create a floating island, out on still warm waters, some hundreds of yards away from land. So there's a real sense of container on that island. And on that island to have tents and to construct a series of experiences where 30 people could come together and share 3 days, say, on this island, and have it be curated and held in a way that brings out warmth, brings out friendship, and feels very free. What makes it beautiful is, the isolation from the mainland, and not to mention no cell phones and emails and stuff, creates this wonderful basking of, like, I have all this time, what would I like to do? And I love the idea of reading and conversing and getting to know other people, doing certain groups and group activities together, yoga in the morning, eating, and having, different spaces on that island. I'm picturing it maybe 50 yards by 50 yards, so like 150 to maybe at most 300 feet by maybe 150 feet, something like that. And, just feeling the rocking of the waves, being very close to nature, being able to swim. And what's beautiful to me about it, the most beautiful thing, is that somebody thought about it. Somebody thought about this to enrich the human experience, and then created it, and then offered this as an experience that others people can share. And to me, that touches me, that someone had a dream and made it a reality for no other reason than that human beings could have a unique and rich experience and share it. And so If I was the host and creator of such an island, my favorite part would be introducing people to the possibility field of the island. So let's say there are 30 people at a time, that come out. If it's kind of a 3-day event, and to do this every weekend, for example, and then to spend the week in between, relaxing, digesting, integrating, preparing for the next guests. The sense of preparing unique, curated experiences in a completely unique space and letting people feel cared about and feeling a sense of wonder as they come on to such an island. What is so sacred to you that you don't like sharing or talking about it because it offends you when other people take it cavalierly? Well, one of those things is pain. There are certain types of loneliness, certain types of pain or trauma that hurt so much that it's incredibly offensive to me if people don't acknowledge the honor of being let into that domain. Because the way that I see it is all experiences are within the psyche. And the things that speak the most about who we are what hurts us the most and what causes us the most joy. So both of these are sacred to me because they're very close to the core values of an individual. And so there's many situations where I cringe about talking about pain at a certain intensity because I understand that in our culture we do not know how to honor that pain to a degree that respects what a clue it is, because pain is this incredible thread that if you follow it through, you not only get to know yourself and know someone, but it leads you to healing the pain, because you get to something that was positive that has been violated, because pain is separation from something and longing for what is separate. It's whatever that is. A limb that's been cut off, I long to be whole. And so, I would say, and also great enthusiasm, great joy is another thing, to share something and have someone change the subject. Both dishonoring the opportunity to get very close to another person's soul. What blessing would you like to receive, and who would you like to receive it from? One of the blessings I'd like to receive is for being a man. I bless you for seeing a man, and who I'd like to receive it from is a group of women in a role of deity or a role of priestess. I'd really love to walk a circle or walk a line and bow my head down to each woman in the circle, and each woman gives a certain blessing that means something to her about being a man. I bless your courage as being a man. I bless your tenderness as a man. That kind of theme. To be blessed and welcomed as a man by a circle of women that understand that power. This is not a pseudo-adolescent sexual kind of thing, but that really understand that when we receive or give a blessing, there's an acknowledgement of that part in the other human being, an acknowledgement that it's seen. And I can think of few things more healing than being blessed, could be as a human being with various things, outlined, or as a man, or as my name, and acknowledging the different gifts that are seen. So that's the blessing that I'd most like to receive. What do you think is the most efficient way for you to spend 40 minutes a day with the goal of creating the highest amount of sustainable well-being? Well, I don't think there's one, but having 40 minutes a day set aside to create the most amount of well-being, I think, is kind of the key, to have a window of time. And for me, it would kind of be ideally around sunset, early evening. And so my favorite version of that would be to have a conversation with a friend of how can we bring the most joy and well-being to other people, and then have it be an adventure every day. And then I think what would leverage that even further is going out on adventures to try and bring well-being, and videoing them. So we'd have, a video, someone with a video camera, and then both of us, and we'd have an adventure with the goal of bringing well-being to people, and then measure our results. That we'd set out, and we're going to take a unit of energy, a certain unit of time or natural resources and money, and we're going to leverage that, and then gauge the effect, and then share the meme. Here's how to bring well-being. And then just keep experimenting and listening to people and riffing off people and hearing. I think that starting this meme of 30 minutes a day, 40 minutes a day, of generating well-being for others and for community would be the most exciting way to do that. What is your definition of intelligence? Well, I've thought a lot about this, and to me, the measure of a person's intelligence is the efficiency with which they transform time, money, and natural resources. You could also add attention and emotion into human well-being. Basically, in a nutshell, the efficiency with which an individual transforms energy into human well-being sustainably is a measure of their intelligence. What is your definition of love? Well, I've been thinking a lot about what adult love is, because there's need, and there's lust, and there's, self-gratification. But adult love is focused outward. And and of course it begins by loving oneself. But, someone who loves themselves and is self-actualized and then looks outward, the thing that is most, so helping another person to meet their human needs. So, and of course this also starts with self, but to help oneself survive, feel secure, have a sense of love and belonging, develop their skills and gifts, bring those gifts out into the world, and then be a part of something bigger, planetary well-being, etc. What is your definition of abuse? Well, good use, I think, ties in with intelligence and is using time, money, natural resources, and opportunity to create sustainable well-being for oneself and others. So abuse is doing the opposite. The absence of good use is kind of how I think of abuse. And so, if I'm not respecting a tool and as a result it breaks quickly, that's abuse, etc. So abuse is the absence of good use, the waste of an opportunity. So abuse of a child, you have this wonderful opportunity for innocence and unconditional love and curiosity and growing. So to abuse a child is to take someone with all that potential and reduce them to a self-hating wreck, a shame-based addict. That is childhood abuse. What is your definition of trauma? I would say that it is an experience that threatens identity. So whatever we identify most with, we have as this is me. And then other things that we don't identify with, we say, well, that's not me. But this is me. And whenever identity, this could be financial identity, social identity, physical identity, mental identity, I believe that I'm a Christian or whatever it is. Whenever an identity experiences overwhelming mass, meaning a mass that threatens that identity. For example, if you say that I'm a really peaceful person and that's my identity, a peaceful, easygoing guy, and someone sticks a gun to my family, and I say, well, I'm not a violent type. But then I'm plotting how to kill, this person before they damage my family. That overwhelming force, the sense of helplessness, like I don't feel I have a choice. I've got to become someone new. Now, I don't see myself as a peaceful person. I see myself as someone who will do anything it takes to keep my family alive, something, and so that might threaten an identity. Or valuable people make X amount of money a year, and I've been making that amount of money, and then suddenly my salary is cut in half or I'm laid off, and now I don't feel like a valuable person. So I think whatever it is that someone primarily identifies with is threatened in a way that makes them feel helpless. It could be a shock around it. It could be like, I'm just completely out of control. And this thing that is me could be no more. And this can be physical trauma in the sense of, bullets are passing by me, and I grasp that as a body I may cease to be in the next few minutes. That's a trauma. If it's, a deep friendship, and that's my primary identity, I am this person's friend, and they say, I'm going away and I'm never going to see you again. It's like, well, where does this friend go? Where does the me that is your friend go? It dies. As you separate a relationship, the part of you that was there uniquely in that relationship, that dies. And so any significant identity that is threatened is a trauma. What is your system for determining ethical behavior? I use mathematical probability fields. So, for example, if I'm in a role that says that my duty, because a role, like, for example, you think of a therapist, and a therapist is receiving time and trust and money on the premise that they've trained and will use that time for the client's best interest. So if the therapist takes the time, the trust, the innocence, the money, and uses that time in a way that is not good for the client, particularly if they know it, that's unethical. And it's a mathematical probability field, because I reference well-being. And if therapists know what they're doing, and every minute spent in therapy results in more well-being, even after the costs of the therapy, the time to get there, the time there, the money spent, the gas going into the atmosphere to drive to the therapist. If the amount of well-being created through that interaction is more than if you didn't go to therapy or did something else, then it seems ethical to accept money for therapy. But particularly, and similarly, if medicine is sold and the amount of money you have to spend for the medicine, which is a negative, is outweighed by the benefit, and there's transparency about that information, then you're going to have more people make the right decision. You've got ethics. As soon as you lie and hide something, you've lost ethics. And so this, there you have a negative. What is something about you that, to your knowledge, is unique on the planet? Well, it's unlikely that this is unique on the planet, but the patience and interest that I will show to a stranger who is in a state of peak enthusiasm, peak vulnerability, peak pain, or peak need of some kind. I'll spend 1, 2, 3 hours being of service and showing interest to that emotional state in a stranger. And I don't separate that from like a wife, a partner, a friend. To me, there are certain human states and certain contexts which are significant states and contexts. And because I want to see more of those states in the world, I'd rather spend time with a stranger on the spur of the moment, 3 or 4 hours, going into a really, for me, sacred terrain, than I would with my wife having a kind of everyday chit-chat conversation. And that has resulted in several people telling me that they've never met anyone like me. But I'm sure they're out there somewhere. What is the question that is most exciting for you at this time? I would say that how can I create more love in my life is that question. What question would you like to invent at this time? How can I spend more time in the Philippines that feels in alignment and just really enjoyable? Which of these questions is most likely to bring well-being to your life? I would say the one I'm most interested in, how to bring in more love in my life. I think that's probably the key question. If someone wants to connect with you, how would you like them to go about it? Well, I think in my ideal world, I would be in different environments, 1, and 2, we would all have an app on our phone that would go into a detailed profile and would allow people in the space to show openness to connect with various people in various ways. And so I think that my favorite thing would be to be going around and have people scan kind of my profile of interests and connection options, and kind of just reach out and say, how about a conversation for a couple of hours like this, or kind of connect in a way, and to have trust rated in the app, so that there wasn't any of this, I don't know you, you're a stranger kind of thing, but more that you have rankings. So you've had thousands of interactions. Have you ever been violent? Have you ever, been swearing at people, et cetera, and so people kind of have a sense of me just in presence, but also in the app. And so there'd be a lot of spontaneous interaction. And the kind of more cut and dry way that kind of exists today would be to go to daneeasterrose.com, look through that field to see some of the things that are most interesting for someone, and for them to reach out warmly and say, based on what you've said here, I think I'd like to connect with you like this. And so that would be the ideal way to connect. So if you'd like to answer these questions, and perhaps bring a few to the table, reach out, and I'd love to talk with you.